In the Breakroom with TWU Local 555, the podcast is back. We are continuing our Heritage series with Pride Month. I'm Eric Peterson, Communications Director for the Local, and I had the pleasure to go down to San Diego and talk to one of our great members, Ray Perez Pitstick. We talked about Pride Month, what it means to him, what it means to his community, the history of Pride. It's kind of a loose conversation. We forgot the microphones were even going. We just kind of started talking and then realized, oh yeah, we're in the middle of the interview. So we're going to kind of pick it up right there. This is Ray Perez Pitstick from San Diego in the Breakroom.
I moved down here when I was 19 for college, and I've been here 23 years.
So like West Coast your whole life?
Yeah. My family's been here since the 1890s in California.
I mean, that kind of gives us a different perspective on Pride because it's different on the West Coast, at least since like the 90s.
Yeah.
Compared to anywhere else.
Yeah.
With the exception of maybe like, New York or Chicago or something like that.
Yeah, the bigger cities.
Yeah.
Coming from a small farm town, the country agricultural part of California, there was no pride. There was no concept of that. I was born in the 80s. So even all through high school, there was no concept of that for me, of Pride Month or, celebrating gay pride or anything, because that was still the 90s. And, when I'd moved to San Diego, for me, I mean, even though there's a lot of military around here, and it's can be a little bit more conservative in parts of the city, it was very liberal, and it felt very liberal, and it felt very like open, and you could just be who you want to be and do whatever you want to do. And there was no sort of stigma or sort of afraid of being found out, because that's sort of what it was coming from a small town where everyone knows everyone. It was very, very Mayberry back then, and everyone knew everything, and you would go to the grocery store and you would see grandma or your cousin, and so you just couldn't really explore your identity, and you kind of just fit in that sort of that role of what you should be, sort of that nuclear dynamic of what's expected of you or something.
The difference between being out 30 miles inland versus along the West Coast all the way up and down is night and day, I would imagine.
Oh, I think that's in California general. I think
Oregon too.
Anywhere off the coastline, you get more suburbia, I guess you could say, the white picket fence and that sort of ideal that has been presented to you growing up, like, the white picket fence, the husband, wife, the 2.3 kids and the dog. And like, that was always sort of the ideal of what you should have strived for growing up in a small town. So coming out here at 19, I moved here when I was 19, I still didn't have access to the nightlife or those experiences. And, the only place you can go out and be yourself, around the nightlife was going down to Tijuana. And so even back then in the early 2000s, I don't even know if there was any like gay clubs or gay bars or gay cafes or anything that was geared towards the LGBTQ community back in 2001, 2002. As I grew up and had, certain experiences and relationships, so once I had turned 21, I didn't feel any pressure. I didn't feel any need to come out or forced to come out or was outed. I was kind of like, I think I'm just going to go to a gay bar. And back then there was no Google or something. I forgot how I found out where the gay district was here in San Diego, Hillcrest. I think I just drove up and down University Avenue, which is kind of like the main street of Hillcrest. Pulled over and I found my first gay bar, and I just went in and had a beer, and I was like, yeah, I think I'm gay. And it made sense. Like being in that environment, everything felt normal, and I use normal to me, and I use normal loosely. Everything made sense, I think, at that time.
I mean, the way you describe it, it would almost kind of be like a second birthday for you.
Yeah, I mean, it's, and I know you read a lot of stories and a lot of how people struggled. A lot of people who live in more rural communities or, middle America don't have that big city. I never felt that sort of closeted pressure, or not pressure, more of the, I had to be in the closet, or fear of being outed or whatever. I just was always more of, just kind of went with things, went with the flow, and just like figured it out as I went along. And, going into Flicks, which was my first gay bar ever, you made friends. You sat there, it was a very divey bar. It was very much like a Cheers setting. You walked in, you had a drink, and you sat at the bar, and people just talk to you, and, they're very friendly. And I was like, it made sense to me. I was like, I'm gay and this is where I belong, where I should be. And then I just naturally came out, I think maybe that year, to my family before Thanksgiving, because I had started dating somebody, and I was like, I think I'm just going to let everyone know the truth, who I am, what I'm doing, and who I want to be. And the majority of my family was like, well, we already kind of knew growing up. I didn't have that self-awareness. So when I had my own self-awakening, everyone in my family was like, well, yeah, we already knew that. We knew since you were like 4. And I was like, okay, well, there it is.
You mentioned that friendliness from that first time, and that's kind of like the essence of Pride in 2024, and it really didn't become that way. Mid-90s, it kind of got bigger and bigger and bigger to the point now to where it's a national event that corporations try to jump in there and get their slacktivism going. But, back then it was for the gay community.
Mm-hmm.
And that friendliness was it was contagious. And now it's kind of grown to be the community's community.
Yeah, and I can see, and I remember, the early 2000s when I had moved here and started going, to the Pride festivities up, in San Francisco, and here it was very much a celebration and a friendship, and the support system of being who you are and not being afraid of expressing yourself. And then as time went on, now it's a bit, the corporations have kind of wanted to latch on to that.
Is that offensive to you?
Yes and no. I wouldn't say it's offensive to me. I feel that it's a little bit more disingenuous. The product placement and the advertisements of all for Pride. And then, you hear in the news and all these, these things, people kind of do their own little investigation about like, well, you're pressured from the other side, and then you're backtracking on your stance and stuff. So then you hear that, you see the backlash of the other side saying, well, the boycotts and stuff. So I wouldn't say it's offensive. I feel like it can maybe be not genuine in the support.
Could a plus side be that if it's more accepted on a larger scale, that it might be easier for somebody who was in, your shoes when you're 19 or so to be able to want to live their authentic self?
Yeah. I mean, that's the other side. I think that's the other side of the coin, is that having that exposure or that visibility and that support, even if it's a corporate support, gives, I think, that person the self-awareness to be proud of who they are and not to be afraid of being out. Now there's commercials. Like I can't remember seeing commercials like that on the TV supporting Pride Month and, the community. And now that's something you see on TV and like all, social media, and it's much more accessible to everyone. So everyone has that opportunity to see support, whether it's your neighborhood support, your friend community, or corporate support. I think having that visibility for people to see, I think is a positive thing, actually.
Let's go back and maybe kind of tell everybody about like the history of Pride and history of Pride Month. Not government recognized Pride celebrations. That's 25 years, but starting in like 1969.
1969, it was the sort of the Stonewall riots that kind of was a catalyst for Pride and, the lesbian and gay movement during June. So that's why, it's my understanding, that's why June is specifically Pride Month, because that's when all that happened in New York.
And then I also read that in San Diego, it's July also because of the weather.
Well, Pride Month, I've always seen it as Pride, almost like a Pride season, because you have, June being the official Pride Month and the festivals and the parades starting off in June. But here in San Diego, it's in July, and then you have going all the way into Palm Springs in, October, November. So I've always thought of it more as a Pride season, Pride summer, all over the world, there's different celebrations throughout the summer.
I mean, the more the merrier. If you've ever been to a Pride event, everybody is in a good mood.
Yeah, and it's funny, there's, I can remember there's maybe a little space squared, cornered off for the protesters, which is fine. Everyone has the right to, voice their feelings and their opinions. But I mean, I like that it's not just, gays only. It's everyone. And I like going to the Pride Parade, and you see families and a support system and friends that are coming that may not be, gay themselves. They're an ally or friend of a friend, and they would support and just see everyone come together and celebrate and, have a great time and see, the floats go by and just, it's one big block party for me, and it's a lot of fun. It's probably one of the funnest parts of the year, to go out and be with your friends and just be free and just have that energy and that great time.
And as we talk about how Pride Month has evolved over, like the past 50 years, in those early days, there wasn't, a tolerance towards people of color or trans people within the gay community. And that has evolved now to where it's a big tent.
That's really wonderful to have that broad, inclusive element to it. Because you're right, in the beginning, there wasn't very much of that visibility, I guess you could say, or, as time went on, the flag had more colors added to it and more meaning and symbolism to the inclusivity of, everyone.
And yeah, now in 2024, it's like I said, it's a big tent. Everybody is celebrated. There is no you're out because you're blank.
Yeah, I like that. I like that anyone, even if you're, exploring yourself or your identity, you're included in that. And it's not just something that's going to be, oh, you have to be this or that to be included. It's like you're bi or you're queer, you're, experiencing different things in your life, welcome. There's even times I've been at bars where, straight people come in and they're just like, I feel more comfortable here because it's just not pretentious, and it's just, you can come and kick your feet up, whether you're gay or straight, and just have a good time and just enjoy a conversation and meet new friends. Like now that I can remember, I've had a lot of friends that were straight in the military that actually had a lot of fun going to the gay bars and to the nightclubs with me and my girlfriends. And it was just a really fun atmosphere and energy that they enjoyed more than going to the quote unquote straight clubs or whatever.
Right. I was one of those guys because you're going to have a good time. Everybody's going to be in a good mood. There's less brosive behavior that goes on at clubs like that. Sure. You can relax and just have a good time.
It's very, that's what I've always enjoyed about that scene. It's like you can roll in however you're looking that day or however you're feeling and just be yourself and have a drink and make new friends and make new conversations. And to this day, that's how I've met some of my really good friends that were friends to this day. Is I just walked into Flicks, sat at the bar and just started talking to somebody, and we've become friends even to this day. 20 years later, we're still friends.
We talked about, kind of the beginning stages of Pride, and the 70s and 80s were not the greatest politically for the gay community. Come around the late 90s, then Pride Month officially becomes recognized by the government. Does that carry any weight with you? Does that carry any weight with you and your friends, the people in your community?
I mean, I was saying that earlier where I kind of just maybe went through life with the rose-colored lenses or whatever. I was saying, I never experienced that stigma or that oppression or that fear of losing my job or that fear of being kicked out of the military or being ostracized. So sometimes, like, when I hear other stories, I do feel a bit guilty that I wouldn't say go through that, but I feel like I had it a little bit easier. And, going through, the 60s and 70s where it was a little more hard and you had to be more in the shadows of things and keep things more private. I don't know who I would be or what my life would look like had I had to go through these experiences. Coming from a small town, I just can't imagine. There's even people I've dated that have had those traumatic experiences and those oppressive situations, and I just can't imagine who I would be if I had to go through that.
The mental health aspect of that intolerance
for sure.
in the gay community is off. But at the same time, if you look at educational stats, home ownership, quality of life, that is high too. So there's an offset there.
Today, now. Oh, yes. Oh, for sure. Just the ability to be who you want to be and love who you want to love, and having that now, more of that social acceptance. Like, I can't imagine not being married to who I'm married to and having the home we have and having the neighbors we have. Like, I don't know what it would be like to have to live my life authentically in the 60s and 70s and almost in the 80s, dealing with everything else that was going on and having to just keep everything sort of a secret.
I mean, going back to something we were talking about earlier, if the government recognizes 1 month out of the year, or if Exxon changes their logo for 1 month out of the year, if if one life is saved, or if one person has to go through one less day of trauma.
Yes, and I agree with you. If those commercials or those corporate 1 month supportive campaigns helps one person change their mind about another individual, I think that's great. I think that's sort of a mission accomplished if you're changing someone's mind for the better.
That is Ray Perez Pitstick from San Diego in the Breakroom. We're talking about Pride Month as part of our Heritage series. Part 2 of that interview is coming up, so make sure you subscribe to the podcast, make sure you share it, make sure you subscribe to our social media at TWU Local 555, and we'll catch you on the next episode when we continue our conversation with Ray Perez Pitstick in the Breakroom. Happy Pride Month, and remember, we are all 555.